guys, it's Kales, and I want to talk to you about the best and worst books I read in 2016. Holy crap, 2016 is over, guys. It's 2017. What happened? This was an amazing year for me. I know a ton of people have been going on and on and on about how 2016 was terrible, and for a lot of our world it was not the best circumstances that it could have been, and I really think that a lot of terrible things did happen. But for me personally, in my personal growth and in my life, 2016 was one of the best years I ever had. It was also one of the best reading years I ever had. I read 111 books in 2016, which I am ridiculously proud of, since my goal was only 52 because I was worried about getting new jobs and worried about being able to read more. But it turns out when I got my jobs I read more because I've been driving more. But I figured it out, and I'm so happy with this year that I had. Speaking of this year, I want to talk to you about some statistics and some things that I learned about my reading habits. Let's talk about stats, baby! The total number of books that I read in 2016 was 111 books, and over the course of those, I rated the majority of those books as 4 stars, which is pretty average for me in terms of books that I like and books that I dislike. I didn't have that many 1 stars, which I was really proud of, but I had a surprising number of 2 stars, which I can't remember having that many before. I also DNF'd 5 books, but I did not put that on my stats chart because I didn't want to mix up my Goodreads hickeys, and because that's a word. I also had 2 rereads, otherwise everything else was brand new for me. In terms of genres, this shocked me more than anything else. And coming in first in terms of the most for the genres I read was fantasy, seconded by contemporary, third by graphic novels, which I'm really proud of myself for reaching out of my comfort zone and trying graphic novels, which was something I hadn't previously read a lot of, and the fact that it came in third of the most books that I read was awesome. And look at that mystery thriller category, guys! Look at that mystery thriller category! I also made me think about how I claim that historical fiction is one of my favorite genres, but I actually didn't end up reading a lot of historical fiction, so hopefully that'll be something I can do in 2017. Books that I read per month, you can see a huge increase. I don't technically believe that January won, but maybe I did only read 2 books in January, and I don't really know why. But that's okay. It seems really low for me. The most books that I read clearly was in December. If you've watched my December wrap-up, you know it because it's like 24 minutes long, because I read 24 books, and I had to talk about them all, and I had huge opinions on some of them. But there was a steady increase, which I think had a lot to do with the fact that my life changed right around that as well. I got a job, and so I started reading more, especially because I work for a library now, and just focusing a little bit more on my books and reading, which I really enjoyed. Additionally, year in publication, this was a very interesting stat that I developed as well. The majority of my books that I read were 2016 releases, which is okay because I'm keeping up on 2016 releases and books that are new and coming out and upcoming, and that makes me very excited to do that. But I was also impressed with some of the older books that I read that were like written in the 60s or the 30s, and that was very interesting as well. So I hope maybe for 2017 I can spread that out a little bit more evenly and read some of those classics as well, because I've got them on my shelf and there are some of them that I want to reread and some that I already have read, but maybe I can delve into that a little bit more. So that's my reading year in terms of numbers. Let's talk about my reading year in terms of books. So here were my worst books that I read in the year 2016. And I don't own any of them, for which I'm really proud. One of the worst books that I read this year was called Well's End, and nobody's heard of this book. And it's for good reason. I got it at a used bookstore because it sounded interesting, because it's also set in Colorado, and it's about this teen group of kids that go to a boarding school, and they all get on lockdown by the government because they're contracting some disease that starts killing everybody, and this girl whose father works in a secret hidden government base in one of the mountains runs away with these group of friends to go there, and it turns out that like secret government hidden facility is like holding the fountain of life, and it's dumb, and it becomes all fantasy. It goes from like dystopian apocalyptic to fantasy in like 2 seconds, and it was dumb, genre jump, wasn't written very well, no character development, not worth your time. This one I know I'm gonna get some flack more, but I don't care. Come at me, bro. I will argue this till the cows come home. Another one of the books that I read that was one of the worst books I read was Clockwork Angel. I am not a big fan of Cassandra Clare, guys. Sorry, I'm not. It's okay. I will stand by that. It's fine. I have my own reasons for it, but this book was dumb. Also, this book was more like any of her other books. It was just highly ununique for me, and the institution didn't need to go back in time. Also, it was like so not set in London, so not period, so not even steampunk. Nah. I put one of my DNF books on here because it was so terrible, and I feel like I gave it the fairest shot that I possibly could by reading it about 2/3 of the way through, and then I had to stop, and that was The Rosie Effect. I loved The Rosie Project, but The Rosie Effect was awful. Basically, sorry if this is spoilery, but basically they end up together, and if you don't get that by the titles, you're just not paying attention. Rosie gets pregnant, and basically the antagonist in this book is a social worker who is claiming that Dawn is not fit for parenthood, and it makes me so upset, whether he is on the autism spectrum, officially or unofficially. They can be parents too. It does not mean that he is ill fit to be a parent, and it's terrible and awful, and he gets arrested, and it just is horrible. Just don't bother. I don't even know how it ended because I just didn't want to finish it. I was so offended by this book. So offended. The second dwarf book that I read was actually the group book that we read for Spooktober, Haunting of Hill House. Talk about a book just being dumb. Like, what? This wasn't even scary, and I don't even know if it was because it was written a while ago or if because it was like trying to be scary, but apparently the movie is way better than the book because the movie, they had to have warnings on it because people were like freaking out in movie theaters. They had to put out like a general public announcement saying, hey, this movie's scary as hell. This book was nowhere near that scary. The whole time I just was like, why don't you leave? What is keeping you here? What is your motivation? And it just pulled me out of the story completely. There are tons of other scary books out there that we could have read, and hopefully for Spooktober next year we'll pick something a little bit more scary. Finally, the worst book that I read this year, if you couldn't already guess from how much I've ranted about it and how much I dislike it, is Dorothy Must Die by Danielle Page. I have several videos, or little snippets of videos, where I have gone on about how I dislike this book, and how I think it's a terrible retelling, and how I think it's terribly written, and how I also think that it follows every trope known to man, and is just trying way too hard to be anything unique and special and just good. It's not. Don't bother. Anyway, now I want to talk about some books that I did love this year, and these are the 5 best books that I read in 2016. I have to put this on here, and I'm putting Princeless. If you just watched my December wrap-up, you know that I sped read through this entire graphic novel series, at least what I could get my hands on, and I love this series. I am so happy this is out in the world, and I'm so happy that somebody is representing women and princesses in this way. Princeless is about Princess Adrienne, who has 7 sisters, and they all get locked in towers, and she finds a sword under her bed one day and decides to rescue herself. So she and her dragon and a couple friends that she meets run away, and she plans to save her sisters because she doesn't need a prince to save her. And I love that. I love it. I love the humor. I love the characters. It's fantastic. And it's probably one of the best books I read this year. Another book this year that I read that I loved was Shipbreaker, and holy crap, this was different and engaging and intriguing and amazing, and I need to read Drowned Cities, and I just remember being so pleasantly surprised with this book and how it drew me in. It was different in the language, it was well written, and this world and this society that he's created of the lower southern United States, and how it's like post-apocalyptic and great. It's about this boy who is a shipbreaker and it works for this not company, because they're not a company. It's like set in the far, far future when ships have broken down and they like scrape them for oil and things, and it's about survival, and he finds this girl during one of his hauls and instead decides to rescue her versus like getting the money, and he takes him on this journey. Oh, it's so good. So good. I really was pleasantly surprised by this one and so enjoyed it. The next, one of my other top 5 books was Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. And I know that I said on my video that when I first reviewed it and did it in my wrap-up that it didn't like hit me, and I lied. Not intentionally, because I haven't been able to stop thinking about this book. It's something that has hit me and has inspired me, and I share it with people, and I love the story and the characters and the development and the tear-jerking, and the fact that it's an untold story of history makes me so happy. And I just love that these stories get to be told in these events, and now that I know about it. So I changed my rating to 5 out of 5 stars because, guys, seriously, I read this book months ago and I still haven't been able to stop talking about it. That says something. The next book on my top 5 was Lily and Dunkin, which was a middle reader book that was inspiring and awesome and just filled with friendship and love and family. It is about a young transgender girl who is trying to get her parents to let her go through hormone therapy and is trying to be a girl, and Dunkin, which is his nickname, who has bipolar disorder and has gone through trauma in his own life, and how they become friends and how they try and save a tree. And again, this is one of those books that has just stayed with me all year long since I've read it. And I'm so glad that I own a copy now. And the author and I have talked on Twitter, and she's amazing, and I just am such an advocate for this book. Finally, the best book that I read this year was Illuminae, and closely seconded by Gemina, and this series is incredible! God, I love how it is written, and how it is different, and how it is structured, and how it is sci-fi, and it just blows my mind still when I think about it. I like talk to people who haven't read this book, and I'm like, what are you doing with your life? It's so good and visually amazing, and it just makes me so happy to talk about this book. It is about Ezra and Katie, who break up the day their planet is destroyed, and it is told through a series of hacker files of how they must try and survive on these ships, and there's a virus and zombies and artificial intelligence, and it's so good! I cannot wait for the third one, even though Gemina just came out! Those were my best and worst books of 2016. What were your favorite and least favorite books of 2016? I'd love to hear from you guys. Here's to 2017 and having it be an awesome reading year. Until next time, guys, bye! As well as collaborations. Love triangle, tropes at the wazoo. I also have another book. I have this book that I'm gonna do, these books are the same, with another book, and I just said book a lot. It's a horrible thing where he takes it. Ow, I just hit my elbow on the bookcase. Anyway, I was very upset by it. Not happy.